Hi, Scott here. We're meeting once again to get ready for confirmation at Valois United Church, and as part of that, today we're rethinking about our Bibles. And you've probably seen the Bible at church in the pews, in those seats that you sit in. You'll see the Bible there with the hymn book, and you probably have one at home, and you've probably been in Sunday school and heard stories from the Bible. And that word Bible simply means book or scroll. But the Bible is actually more like a library. It's a collection of books, different kinds of books with different flavors. Um, there are prophetic books, there are legal books, there are poetry books, there are history books, there are song books, there are letters, there are gospels, there are apocalyptic writings there. They're all very different kinds of writings and kinds of literature that have taken place over time and in different places. The Bible is a series of sacred texts, that is, writings or scriptures that Jewish people and Christian people consider to be a product of divine or godly inspiration and a record of the relationship between God and human beings. And depending on which part of the church you are in and where you are from, the number of books that are in the Bible varies. In the United Church, we would speak of there being 39 books in the Old Testament and 27 in the New Testament. That the Old Testament reflects God's time with the Jewish Hebrew people, and the 27 books of the New Testament reflects, well, the time of the early Christian church. Oral literature, that's how it all began, evolving into written literature, Old Testament, New Testament. There are also apocryphal books and also deuterocanonical books, books that maybe have value for historical reasons or might be seen as part of the Bible in other parts of the church. But those 39 books of the Old Testament, 27 in the New, are generally the way we think about our Bible. Now, the Bible is a useful book. It speaks to our very living and to our lives, and it's important to be familiar with it. You might learn more by going to church and by paying attention to what you hear there in Sunday school or in a service, perhaps in the sermon. There are also opportunities to learn through things like Bible studies and through reading. We have an extensive church library. You can learn more that way. You can also learn by going on the internet. You can find out more about the time period in which pieces were written, how people look at those particular pieces of writing, and also God's Spirit is in you, and God's Spirit guides you as you apply some of those things to your living and to your life. The Bible, it has sales of over 5 billion copies, and it sells usually 100 million copies in a year, and it is considered to be the best selling book of all time. And it's been a major influence on literature and history, particularly here in the West where we live. It's very important to our lives and our understanding of them. So you should acquaint yourself with it. It's not a bad thing to do. Pick a version that you like. There are all kinds of versions out there. Of course, they're all translations. The Old Testament probably looked something like this. I don't know if you can read that or not, but the Old Testament is written in Hebrew, and the New Testament probably looked something like this, written in Greek, Koine Greek. But we don't usually use those. We use translations. And here's one that puts two translations side by each of the New Testament, with the Greek on this side, and over here we've got the King James Version, and over here the New International Version. There's the Good News Version right here. There is the Revised Standard Version that we use in the pews at church. There are all kinds of versions, and they're all translations from different time periods, and they have different purposes. For instance, the Good News version that I held up here was designed for people who had English as a second language, and so it uses a simpler vocabulary. And sometimes it can be very, very clear and helpful to read that version. Others are older, like the King James Version, and some people like it because it has a poetic quality. The New Jerusalem Bible, which was written for Roman Catholic folk, has a wonderful literature feeling to it. And people like Tolkien, who wrote Lord of the Rings, was involved in its preparation. So they each have a different flavor, a different purpose, but use different ones at different times, but find one that you like and use it and read it and acquaint yourself with the stories and the letters and other things that are there. You probably already know some of the stories like Adam and Eve and Noah and Abraham and Sarah and David and Goliath and stories from the life of Jesus. Well, we'll read them. Perhaps even on Sunday, when people are reading from the sacred scriptures, you could follow along. Take the Bible out of the pew and look it up. If you don't know where a particular book is, there's an index at the front, and it'll tell you what page to look to. And it's nice to follow along when somebody's reading. But people read the Bible to pay attention to their lives and to help them find meaning in their lives and to connect with God and understand God's purpose in their living. And it's important to do that regularly. It's not easy to do, but it's something that you can do. And so I leave it with you. Find a Bible and use it. Take care. Bye bye.